I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Martin Zych, the founder of Jirav. He has had a career as a finance and accounting professional and specialized in high-growth tech companies. Previously, he was the finance director at Limeade and Zephyr Health and a controller at Atlas Accelerator CFO firm. He has set up dozens of finance functions and helped raise over $200 million in funding. He founded Jirav to build the tool he wished he'd had when he was growing companies. He's a dad to 2 kids and a fan of Seattle sports teams. He loves outdoor activities like hiking and snowboarding, and you might even catch him discussing financial strategies on a mountain trail. This interview with Martin was all about his upbringing as we discuss his journey from Poland to living the American dream as an entrepreneur. There are so many takeaways from this interview that I think you will find, and I hope that you will share this with your friends and peers that you think this would be helpful for. This episode was sponsored by Jirav. Drive efficient growth in your accounting and finance practice with Jirav's all-in-one forecasting, budgeting, reporting, and dashboarding solution. Jirav automates financial planning and analysis and empowers firms to triple their advisory revenue by integrating general ledger, workforce, and non-financial data. As the preferred solution provider of CPA.com, Jirav is trusted by over 4,000 businesses and firms thanks to our exceptional platform, training, and support. To learn more about Jirav and their accounting firm partner program, visit jirav.com. That is JIRAV.com. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. And today I'm with Martin Zych, who is the founder and chief customer experience officer for Jirav. And Martin, you want to give a little background on yourself before we get started?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amy. So I'm the founder at Jirav. We are an all-in-one financial forecasting platform built for accounting and finance professionals, typically supporting folks through like accounting firms or small mid-market businesses. And a little background about myself. So I have a finance degree and an accounting degree, an accountant by trade, and used to be a controller and would help small startups when it's like 4 guys and a dog and they have an idea and they want to raise $1 million, and we'd work with them, all these entrepreneurs, and help them build up their business models, understand all the numbers. And from that, folks launch their businesses. So I did that for many years and then eventually decided to build a tool to help kind of productize that and bring that out to the masses.
Yeah, which is awesome. And for those of you that are controllers or CFOs, it is amazing what you've built. So love to get into your story. So we're going to start from the beginning, and the beginning being, where did you grow up and what did your parents do for their occupations?
Yeah, so where I grew up, I think even going a step before that's kind of interesting. So I was born in Europe, and my parents had, while my mom was pregnant, gone to a political refugee camp. So I popped out in a little refugee camp outside of Vienna in the early 80s. And then we were leaving communism in Poland at the time.
Wow.
And then we ended up becoming political refugees, got into the US, moved to St. Louis, Missouri. So I was there, little kid. And then I'd say home is Seattle, though, because that's where I really grew up, from elementary through college. And most of my family is there. I went to the University of Washington, did that finance degree, and then did the extra 5th year for accounting. Moved down to the Bay Area 2013, and being in that kind of tech ecosystem was kind of fun, in that startup lifestyle. So learned a ton while there. And now we are headquartered in Austin, Texas, where I moved out in 2020.
So I want to go back to your parents. So how did they get out of the refugee camp and even get to the US?
Yeah, so there's this place that was set up, and I guess it's been around for like hundreds of years, was that what I heard? Like, and they would help people like in early days. And they had this camp that was set up that would help people trying to get out of all the ex-Soviet countries. And they applied for visas all around the world. So we applied to like Australia and Canada and the US, and you've got, lotteries for this stuff. We did that process, and somehow we got, the lottery to get into the US, and then they
Wow.
guide us in, and, we moved. My parents had just a couple of suitcases, and then me as a little baby when we came over,
How old were you?
less than a year.
Wow. Oh my goodness. How long were they in the refugee camp?
So probably just about a year, because then I was there, well, in my mom's belly, and then a little bit after that.
Wow. So St. Louis was the lottery, or did you have family or people that your parents knew there?
I think they pointed at the middle of the map and went, here's a big city because we've never been to America. I think this is in the middle. Let's just go from there and see what happens.
Oh my goodness. So what were their occupations prior to leaving Poland?
So prior, they both worked in a hotel together. So they were like the front desk folks. My parents, like my mom speaks, I think like 5 or 6 languages. So she
Oh
was like
wow.
German and Russian and English and Polish and French. And my dad knew a bunch too. So yeah, that's what they were doing in there. They had finished school for that originally.
And then when they came here, what did they end up doing?
So no employers in the US would recognize their college degrees. And so they had a completely restart. So my dad ended up, working multiple jobs. He was like an AC repair guy, and then a truck driver, everything you can do without knowing, English too well. Or he knew English conversationally, but without a degree. And then he ended up going, redoing school. And you could even say he was my college roommate because we were doing college at the same
Oh
time.
my goodness.
And he graduated college 1 year before I graduated.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And that's amazing he just stuck with it all that time to make sure he graduated. That must have been inspiring for you.
Well, yeah, totally. It taught me a lot about hard work and perseverance, and then he ended up finishing with an engineering degree, and then went up the ranks at Boeing, designing airplanes and doing a bunch of really cool stuff there.
Wow. And so what about your mom?
She got a degree in the biology field, and then became worked in a lab and as a scientist for the Department of Health.
Oh
So
wow.
it was interesting when COVID first started, and there was like a little place out in the US that got the first kind of cases. Her lab was the first ones that were like, there's something going on. And she saw, all the trailers going around. They were right there, on
Wow.
that out.
So in your house, what was the primary language?
Polish.
Okay. So you're conversational in Polish?
Yeah, I speak in Polish. And then I actually, growing up, even though I grew up in the States, my parents made me finish kind of the equivalent of 8th grade for Polish classes. So
Oh, okay.
I can read and write and do all of that in Polish.
So were you part of a Polish community at all in Missouri or Seattle?
In Seattle, there's a pretty big Polish community. Yeah. So there's this place called Dom Polski where they would do, like, I think I did Boy Scouts as a little kid, and then they did, choir stuff. And then they had like a little restaurant where you could eat pierogi on Fridays, and community center. It was pretty fun.
Wow. So did you have other siblings or were you an only child?
Only child.
Okay. So how did they end up going from St. Louis to Seattle? Because you said that was most of your upbringing.
Think my dad had gotten, because he had started doing these, like, before the college stuff, he had started doing like manufacturing kind of jobs.
Mhm.
So then he ended up getting a job at a manufacturer that started making parts for Boeing. And then, while he was there, that's when he started doing the engineering degree to try to get more into it from that.
So for you, when you were young, what were your hobbies or what were the things that you spent the most time on?
Define young, like what age?
Any age, like your oldest memory. What was your favorite thing to do?
So in middle school, I started really getting into technology, and like
Really?
computers were starting to come out, and and all of that. And I remember making my first website in like eighth grade, and I actually made a business out of it, and it worked. And it was kind of
What
cool.
was it?
Do you remember those old Nokia phones that had like the green and like the two shades of green
Yes.
thing you could play Snake on them? I would get sheet music from the local like music store and play rap songs on piano. And you could download little MIDI files to make ringtones for it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That had to have been really hard at the time.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was really fun then.
So where did you learn? Like, where were you learning it?
Self-taught. So I went, looked at, I got like an HTML book and then learned that and then looked at how websites were set up and just kind of iterated and this was the early days of the internet. So just kind of figured it out.
And what got you so interested about website? Like, what was the start of that? Was there a website you saw or
I think I really wanted rap music on my cell phone. That was probably the first part of it.
who was your favorite rapper?
Tupac.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite rapper?
So I loved Heavy D. So, but Marky Mark kind of like went across hip hop and that, but yeah, for sure. So, did you play music or was that part of your hobbies as well?
I did band in like middle school, but
Okay.
I did trumpet, but because of that, I kind of like you could read sheet music and figure it out from there.
Yeah. So, okay. So you start creating that, which is what did your parents did they know you were doing it? Or what
They
did they think
so,
about it?
so I put like sponsors on the website and do the little banner ads, and then I remember so I was in eighth grade, but they're just like, "What's this internet thing?" He's sitting in front of this computer monitor, and then I started making like a couple $1,000 a month in eighth grade, and I blew it all on. I had like stacks and stacks of baseball cards and like candy in my room, and I think three BMX bikes.
Oh my goodness. Did you sell those eventually?
I don't know what happened to those after a while. They all
You
busted.
were you were literally an entrepreneur from an early age.
Yep.
Yeah. So is that what you were originally going to go to college to do was be in computer science or how did you end up on finance and accounting?
I think so. I always had this kind of entrepreneurial kick, but then my other part, growing up in high school, I was actually an AV nerd. So I would do like the student news and like make videos and all of that. So when I went to college, and I was always really good at math and got honors and good grades and all that. But I really wanted to be this like AV person. So then I applied for film school in
Oh,
like
okay.
LA and USC Film School, and then business was like my backup because I had my parents, like Eastern European parents, being like, get chattering in my ear, get a good job and
Yeah.
that. And I was like, no, I'm going to follow this thing. And I ended up not getting into film school. So I guess I wasn't that good at it but somehow on the business application, I got a perfect score on like the entrance exam thing. And
Wow.
then they let me into college from that.
So how were you able, did you do loans or were your parents saving for this?
For college. Uh,
Yeah.
I got scholarship. So I got scholarship for the first couple of years because I was in the top tier of all graduates in high school. And then was able to kind of get loans and stuff for the back half there.
Yeah, I always find, so I have in my background Russian immigrants, my grandparents were from Russia.
Yeah.
And, to me, like that's like the ultimate, when you've gone into entrepreneurship or startup, but like just not knowing what's on the other side and taking that risk to come to another country, not have the skills, not, know anything about how to navigate things. Like it's still amazing. And there was no technology at the time.
Yep. Yeah,
So
it's
what did you learn from them with that?
I think there's this mindset of like just being really stubborn and like just you got your goal and just
Mhm.
go for it,
Yeah.
and then like it's never a straight route, but don't just stand there. You gotta go for it. be agile, figure it out along the way. And, generally humans are capable folks if you just put the energy to put, one foot forward at a time and start going towards your goals there.
Yeah, because I think, watching your dad take on all those different jobs, I'm sure, he was getting frustrated as well to do that, and you just have to like stick with it to get to his goal. And did you know his goal was always to go to college again?
Well, he worked like two jobs. He'd work crazy overtime all the time. And then he was doing that while my mom was finishing school. And then once she finished school, then she helped more while he was trying to do stuff. But I think it was very clear he had a mission and he's like, I'm gonna figure this out. And he found something that he really liked and kind of nerded out about, on the manufacturing side and really that engineering
Yeah.
side. And once you find something you nerd out about, it's easy to like go all in on that.
Yeah, it's just finding what that thing is, right? So when you were in business school, I mean, that's really different than doing film.
Yep.
How were you feeling about it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. I do like all the entrepreneurship classes. Math was always really easy for me. So I was like that kid that did algebra in middle school as well instead of high school math. And so finance just kind of powered right through and it just came naturally on that side. And I really loved all the different, business as a degree is so broad and there's all these
Yeah.
different specifications and getting to try a little bit of marketing, a little bit of finance. It's kind of cool.
So did you do anything with technology while you were in college?
I think I kept doing websites on the side and building some like e-commerce sites and learning, those kind of things. And then I do my other kind of entrepreneurship kind of projects as well I had my regular summer job, but I'd still do my own little businesses there too. So it just kept evolving and iterating on, tons of these kind of little website projects.
What were some ones that stick out to you that were your favorites?
For entrepreneurship projects. Cool one was one summer we did a hip hop dance class. We hired on some folks. It was like right in the beginning of reality TV where they had like the different hip hop dance competitions and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we got like one of the guys who got second place at it to be an instructor, and
Oh,
then
nice.
and another like professional choreographer. And then we just cold called all the dance teams at every like Western Washington high school and got them all to come in. And got, a couple hundred people to come sign up for this like cool, it was like liquid popping dance class thing for a boot camp. So that was like one summer one. I'd say that's a lot better than, flipping burgers at a restaurant. And then on the other end of the spectrum, helped like a friend of mine, his dad owned a window blind store, and
Uh-huh.
we built like a e-commerce page where you could put in, the dimensions of your windows and it could quote it. Because before you'd always have to look up the person in the yellow pages, call them up. Some person would come to your house and measure all this stuff. And it was a really manual process. And then we ended up doing this for his dad, and then his dad's sales like went through the roof and he became one of the best resellers or biggest ones in Seattle.
Wow. So were there any failures of ones you tried that didn't work out?
Probably a couple. I think we tried to be a wholesale distributor for a clothing brand and like bought all this stuff wholesale, and then it was like trying to sell, like do fashion shows at some bars and stuff and sell, things like that. That was a really it was like hand-to-hand combat to do that. So that
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so because it's interesting, like these first things that we end up doing in business and so forth, like the lessons that we take from those. So when you think about some of these early, like fun side businesses you were doing, what were some of the lessons that you think you learned from that helped you later on?
The big ones are, I ended up learning a lot on B2B versus B2C businesses.
Hmm.
And B2C is so like, it can be so massive if you find this thing that catches fire and then just the universe pulls you into, the next hot thing. But it can also go very trend like, it could just like go from being the hot stuff to absolutely nothing in a year. And then I ended up starting going more into that B2B side where I learned a lot like, here's this thing, everything takes time, and then the value in a B2B business is, I'd say, a little bit less voodoo and more
Hmm.
formulaic. And once you figure out how to operationalize that, you can start stamping stuff out more
Yeah.
regularly. I've been pretty much all B2B in my career ever since college kind of completed and went from there.
Yeah. So those are like great little tests to kind of help guide your future. Did you ever dance? Did you hip hop dance yourself?
I tried to, don't put me in a music video.
Because now that I know this, you sound like you pretty much an expert on it, but maybe watching it.
Yeah, but that was half my lifetime ago. So now I've got, now I'm a lot older, so my moves might
Yeah.
not be as fresh.
So okay, so when you finished college, what ended up being your next role?
I got a job as a project manager at a market research company, and we would do like did you ever do those online or see the things where you can fill out this online survey and get a gift card or
Right. Hmm.
whatever? And we worked for a company that helped like do all the back end of that stuff. So then so that was my first job out of college.
And then, so you weren't in finance then when you were doing that?
That was, you had data analytics in there because we were doing a lot of like statistics on the data set. You say we would get brands like, like a Kroger or Kellogg's or whatever and say they want to launch a new thing. And then you learn about these new products before they go to market. And they say, we want to test 5 cereal boxes and we need, people in this demographic in these areas. And we'd help run the whole project. And then afterwards do like some statistical analysis of like, here's the ones that were better and worse and, make recommendations off of that.
So when did you start taking on finance roles?
Think so. About a year into doing that, my boss he's like, "Hey, Martin, you got a finance degree in college, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Does that mean you know how to use Excel?" And I go, "Yeah, I can, And then he's like, "I got a project for you." And he ended up asking me to do a lot of the internal analytics of the team. So start pulling together the data from all of the different customer projects that we're doing, start working and building like different pricing calculators off of that because you're building these quotes. And we were doing like hundreds of quotes a week for different companies of all these different demographic things and figuring out, are there patterns to like, where is our population best? How do we optimize our margin? So that's probably the first bit of finance. Plus there's technology in that. And we built this like crazy giant Excel file that would scrape all these different sources. And then after about a year, they asked me to work with the engineers to productize this and actually build it into their ERP system. So that
Oh,
was
okay.
a little bit of that. Like I'd say I know enough code to be dangerous, but if you try to give me a job as a coder, I'd be mediocre.
Right.
Talk with engineers pretty well, and we took that and we made it real, and then that company ran with it from there.
Oh, wow. And so when did Giraffe come into play? Like, what was the beginnings of that?
Yeah, so let's see here. About 3 years after college, I had gotten a job then at Microsoft as like a financial analyst for their field finance team. And about 6 months in, I was getting kind of curious though about doing something harder. And I found this like consulting gig that said like build financial models for startups. And I started doing that like nights and weekends while I had my Microsoft gig. And really quickly I like fell in love with it. And I was like working with the CFO at the time at that firm kind of taught me his framework of it, and I can model anything in Excel. You name it, you can't stump me on that part. And really quickly, he was like, "Hey, we want to make you a controller at our firm. Usually, to be a controller, you need to be, 8, 10 years out of school." And I was like 3 years out of school, and they made me like the youngest controller at the firm, and I ended up building all these tools and templates and then teaching the other controllers how to do these like Excel
Mhm.
models that would do your three-way financials, that would do all your KPIs, your metrics. And this firm, I got to work on so many cool companies while I was there.
Yeah. And so from that, you were like, you wanted to take this and create your own product?
Then from that, so I did a bunch of the financial modeling, and I'd say that's that's like the nucleus of what started on this thing. And
Yeah.
we iterated on this modeling stuff. And then I ended up joining one of those clients that, from when it was four guys and a dog until it was a big, massive company. And then I had the opportunity to move down to the Bay Area. I did that again. And when I was there, that's where I thought like there were three enterprise kind of tools that were doing, financial modeling stuff in the cloud. Otherwise, everyone was on these spreadsheets. And at that point, I put them all through their paces. I implemented one of them for this big data company. It was cool once it was up and running, but it was like way overkill for, I was a two-person finance team doing this little startup that just raised some money, and it felt overkill. And it felt like
Yeah.
there's got to be a better way to do this. And that was kind of the tipping point where I told the CEO there, I'm like, hey, I want to do my own startup. And he's like, that's awesome. Go for it. And then I set out to start Giraffe there, and that was almost 9 years ago now.
Wow. So did you initially get investors to get started, or did you just bootstrap it?
So a little bit of both. I went from I had like a really nice job. I had just gotten like crazy salary, all that stuff. And then right after I got that raise, I think 3 months later was when I quit my job to go to the startup. And my parents said, "You're crazy, like keep the conservative thing." And then I put all my stuff in storage and I moved into a hacker house in San Francisco, like a co-living place. Have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley?
Yes.
Kind of like that. I had 35 roommates, and everyone's cranking away on their own little ideas. It was pretty nuts, pretty interesting on that side. So that was me kind of bootstrapping, trying to get the proof of concept going, get a couple of customers. I did have a co-founder who was the VP of engineering at that big data company as well, that we were
Oh,
a leadership team together. So he was also working on it, and him and I kind of we're just meeting in a coffee shop every day and cranking away until we got a little bit of traction. And then once we did that, then we went through the route of getting angel investors, and then a couple years in, we raised from VC from there.
so I want to just pause on something you said about, I had this great salary and I left to do this.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about entrepreneurs? Like, what do you feel is kind of the makeup of an entrepreneur because that's something that a lot of people wouldn't do, is leave a great job, great money to go start over from something that there's no guarantee. So what do you think that is that drives you, but maybe wouldn't be for everybody?
I think for me, like there's this quote done by Jeff Bezos actually, where he called it, I think it was called like the minimal regret framework. And it was like, if you interview yourself when you're 80 years old, and will you regret having made a certain decision or not? And I think when I thought, okay, I'm in my early 30s, will I regret this thing when I'm 80? That I had this idea that I just went for it for a year, and whether it works or not. And I thought, my 80-year-old future self would have said, go for it, go. And some people are maybe risk averse to that, but the biggest word of advice I have, and I realize this in retrospect too, is if you've got the fancy job, and then that means you're a smart person and you can always get another job. But there's only a few times when you have that opportunity to like have something that you're just so passionate about that you want to dive into. And as long as you don't end up on the streets and you can kind of cover yourself for a year or two, like I recommend just go for it and see what happens from there.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that you can nerd out on. Yeah, because I think that's important, is that you have a plan, at least financially, of how you're gonna get through that time period to take that risk, but that you're passionate enough to take that risk as well. That it's not something like there's a little bit of a piece of intuition or gut, that you just have to believe, like your parents did, that this is going to work, this is going to be, just staying the course? Because, the thing with being an entrepreneur is, and I'm sure, you have tons of stories on it, is you have more pitfalls than wins many times. And so how have you withstood that as you've gone through this process?
Think that there's that whole quote, like when one door closes, another one opens. And
Mhm.
I think like if you're not facing those kind of things, and maybe you're not pushing hard enough, like you should be kind of banging up against something, and then you go figure out how to work around it. When you run into those pitfalls, and that's I think the key part of that mindset to kind of work through.
So can you think of some along the way that you've had to persevere where you've hit that pitfall and then have to stick with a belief or intention that got you through it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had it happen many times while doing Giraffe. I remember, one that was pretty crazy was we were doing our Series A round. So and it was February of 2020. So I'm talking to investors, I'm doing all this stuff. We had a bunch of people in due diligence looking at our data, going, okay, this is pretty cool. We already had, a couple customers and we were growing. And then all the lockdowns happened. And immediately overnight, everyone who was like so excited about this thing went, sorry, we are not doing any new investments. We're only going to do our portfolio, and we don't know what's going to happen. And it just flipped, like the light switched to dark. And it was like, what am I going to do? And at that point, I was just like, okay, we're a financial modeling app. I know exactly how much cash we have and like, I got until June, otherwise we're dead. And I was getting ready. I was like, okay, maybe I can like sell my house and do some other stuff and figure this out. But then, so it was like dark for a little point, and then we ended up doing a webinar called Forecasting Through COVID, and like 2,000 people signed up for this thing. And it
Oh,
was like
wow.
we broke the webinar software, and they had to like boot up another thing. And then a couple of the VCs who were still in diligence were like, they saw this and they go, okay, like this is a tailwind for these guys. Like everyone has to, and what we realized, every company in the world was forced to reforecast their business in March of 2020. And it actually became kind of really big driving force for a lot of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that amazing how, something that is so unforeseen comes into play, and you can find the good in it when
It's completely crazy, but yeah, that's exactly that. One door closed and another opened, and it all worked out.
yeah. How much do you in your head think about, watching your father and your mom, like when you're going through these struggles as an entrepreneur?
It's like in my DNA now.
Hmm.
It's like I just see them, and they like never complained about it ever. As a kid,
Yeah.
they're just like, we just got to work hard, and like they pushed me. It was always, if I got a A minus in school, what wrong? Why didn't you get an A? Like, and so they just pushed hard, and persevered, and that grit was really important there.
Yeah, I think that example of that is all, it always sticks with you in your system of like, yeah, they got through this, I can, figure this out or get to the next step and kind of step back. Now, going from like a small company that you started and growing, now you're getting put in the position of being a leader versus the person creation, in the creation of the product. So what was the shift for you as you started hiring staff and having to manage people's careers?
I think when you move from kind of an individual contributor to being a manager, it's a completely different mindset. And
Hmm.
pre-Giraffe, I was a director of finance. I managed a staff accountant and an ARAP person, and maybe an analyst, and now it's like dozens of people all reporting to me and caring about their livelihood. It's hard, but I think I learned a lot because the startup that I had joined, that was the four guys and a dog little thing that grew.
Yeah.
It was actually in the health and wellness space, like corporate wellness space. So it was all
Mm.
about work-life balance and like team engagement and like having that, what gives you energy at work. And that DNA, I think, even though I was just doing finance there, being there, sitting shotgun with the CEO as he's building that platform, it really influenced me for growing this company and making sure I care about that for our team. I think that culture has kind of permeated through the whole staff here, and I think we've got a really great mojo and kind of vibe from that as
So
we've grown.
what are some things you implemented from that, like as
Uh,
far as making sure that that would work for your culture?
I think key one is so like I told so many employees that if we ever feel like a corporate bureaucracy kind of a thing and you feel like you're in office space, you are allowed to just straight up tell me, and I will do everything I can to like make that not happen anymore. Because I don't want it to feel like work. And I think it's about helping people find the right spot of where you're feeling like you're in the zone on like your skill and like where you want to grow, and you're pushing yourself just enough that you're developing and that you're never feeling stagnant. And I'm always really careful about that, that people always have this path for upward progression.
Yeah. How do you get people to move from just doing the same thing every day to wanting to push themselves? Because not everybody is designed that way.
A lot of times I'll ask questions of people like I love asking people this question, which is like, if you had a time machine, what would you tell yourself, a year ago or when you first started the job? And then the learnings that people kind of share from that show that
Hmm.
how introspective they are, and what, that things weren't always perfect. And we go, well, think about that, now your future self 2 years from now, what's the time machine you wish you would tell yourself? And is there, like, if we could do one thing to make your life easier or your job more efficient, or, or that next path, what would it be? And try to figure out opportunities where people can do some interesting projects beyond just, the day-to-day stuff.
So if you had a time machine, what would you tell yourself when you started Giraffe?
And I'm looking at that all the time, and it depends on how far back we go as
Let's
well.
start from the beginning, like right when you were starting.
I think day one, I think we built a lot of things where, like we built a very robust app, and I think getting stuff out earlier out into the market is really key.
Hmm.
Getting that user feedback, because like as a finance person, you're like, okay, I need all the bells and whistles. I need it to do all these things that Excel does. And in reality, like if you're not embarrassed of your first product, that means you've shipped it too late. Uh, and just getting it out in there, getting it in the hands of real users, work off of that feedback, and then just keep iterating fast on that side. Because I think we took a couple years of building before we really had a good number of customers on there.
Isn't that kind of the finance accounting way of thinking of we got to get this right. We got to like make it perfect first, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what about your future self? So if you could talk to your future self in 5 years.
Yeah, I think my focus now is I'm doing everything I can to, like, the things that give me energy are the customer journey and product. So I've been shifting my role even to like take all the administrative stuff of having a bigger company off my plate and like do everything I can to just keep building the product that I wish I had, in my day job.
Yeah.
And as long as that, that's what I'm doing, that gives me energy every day. And, and I'm really passionate, and if keep doing that while, having a great place to work that a lot of people are happy about, I think that's success.
Yeah. So do you feel your 80-year-old self would be happy with the way you've taken this path?
I
Or
think
is there
I think
anything?
in another dimension in the future where he already exists, he is smiling at that. Yes.
Shouldn't have been a hip hop dancer after all that, that you found the right path.
Yep.
That's right. So, okay. So, I'd like to end the interview with just some rapid fire questions. So, pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Spirit.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want.
Things or actions I don't have that I want. More time in the day.
Things or actions I do have that I want to keep spiritually.
I think I try to bring a bit of humor and fun into work. So like we've got this one of our kind of values at our company is let your geek flag fly. So we want to just keep that going for, as much as we can. And I've actually got a personal goal around the humor side, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that in the rapid fire or not.
You're not?
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm signing up for a stand-up comedy class.
Oh, fun.
So that, and at the end, you get to do a bit at a bar for a comedy thing. And I'd like to do it at one of these conferences, and to just do a whole stand-up comedy thing on like accounting and finance. I think it'd be kind of fun for
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to be there for it. So you have to let me know. And you can wrap it.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want.
Things or actions I don't have that I don't want. Negativity. I try to purge that, meditate, don't let it bog you down because that just slows you down.
So you meditate every day?
Try to.
And when do you typically do it in your day?
I got one of these. Have you ever heard of red light therapy?
No.
It's like it's like this red light that like shoots infrared beams at you and like helps stimulate your mitochondria, and it makes your skin better and your muscles feel good. And that's like 20 minutes a day. And I've got my eyes closed and I got to be in front of this thing, and it like helps, after a workout, like loosens everything up. And that's also like just quiet time, because you have to have these blackout goggles with the red light thing on. So it's like the perfect time to just zen myself.
Yeah, very nice. All right. And things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
Things or actions I do have that I don't want. I think over analyzing a bit. I'm a planner. Like I built a planning app, and I think sometimes you need to go where the universe takes you and just kind of go with the flow. And I'm getting a lot better at that, and I'm cognizant of it. But I do tend to, I've historically overanalyzed stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's good if you're running a finance app. So,
Yeah.
so many great stories you shared, and so appreciate you doing this today. Is there anything you want to make sure the audience walks away with that we haven't discussed, or you just want to, hone in on?
As you're thinking about your day-to-day and your work, your work-life balance and what you do in your, in your companies and your firms and clients you're working with, I think, finding that thing that gives you energy and passion is really, really key. And then, sometimes that might even, you might not fully know it, but, thinking about like what will make you happy over time, and like, what are your goals? And like just let that kind of permeate and think about that, and then from that, set your path to start working towards it, and go one step at a time off of that, and life will feel productive as you're moving towards towards those kind of goals, and being and making sure you set time to kind of think through those is really, really key.
I think that's so important. Let that drive your decisions rather than the other way around. So great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm sure so many people are going to take some lessons away from today as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Amy.
And now for my mindful moments with this interview with Martin. And it really begins with this immigration journey, this journey of his parents that were refugees in Poland and made their way to the United States, landed in St. Louis, Missouri, where Martin grew up. And watching his parents take their occupations and strive for an education here in the United States, their hard work, their perseverance, all of the things that they had to do in order to accomplish that, and having English as a second language. Now, as a child, I think we forget how impressionable we are when we're watching these things that our parents are doing and working so hard, and the effect that has on our own inner drive, and also seeing that as well. That whole immigrant generation. And as we get further and further away from it, it's important that we continue those lessons of hard work and striving to be better and striving for that American dream that so many of them came here, risked their lives to come here as well, and really come here with nothing. As we get further from seeing those kinds of examples in our lives, it's harder for us, for our children, for future generations to understand just how fortunate we are to be able to create these lives that we have in not only our careers, but with our families, our friends, and the freedoms that we are able to enjoy. It also leads to that feeling of entrepreneurship. It is the same kind of striving to be better and dealing with the hard times, but not giving up, not quitting, that an entrepreneur needs. I think many people from the outside can look at an entrepreneur and think that they have this freedom and they can do anything that they want. But any entrepreneur will tell you how hard every single day is. That in order to achieve this purpose, this dream that you have, just like an immigrant, there are probably more failures or hard days than good days, and you have to hold on to those good days in order for those days that things aren't working out to be able to persevere through it, to assess it, to start over and think about what are the things you need to pivot or change to still achieve that dream that you have. And by watching his father, it's just so embedded in him of, not only working as hard as his father did, but also achieving his college degree and being able to go on for that, as well as his mom as well. So we talked about his hobbies, and he discussed that when he was little, he was already enamored with websites, learning HTML, and really starting to make his first websites. And his parents were actually concerned about the fact that he was spending so much time at a computer. And I really liken this to a lot of parents that feel that way about video games too, but every single person has a different brain. And the way our brains develop, the way we innovate, the way we learn is different. And it's important for us to step back and understand that, just like Martin's example, him spending that time experimenting, trying out new ringtones for his phone, or, figuring out how to do different websites and so forth so early on. Later, he was able to start making money at a very early age. And so that career journey actually taught him about the difference between going to market to consumer and going to market business to business. And I think that's a really important lesson, is what is your strength, and how in what you deliver, whether it's a service or a product, is it better to sell to another business, or is it better to sell one consumer or customer at a time? It's a completely different way to go to market, and it is those lessons we learn along the way to decide where is it that we are most successful, and what are the passions that I have that would meet that kind of market that I want to gear my business toward. So we talked about how he even got into being able to create a product like Jirav. And it was really his background in finance and working in the tech industry and as a CFO for all these new up and coming tech startups, and going to tech startups himself, and really trying to think about whether there was a better way to be able to do the things that he did in Excel and in other tools, and be able to create that and more for CFOs. And whether you're a fractional CFO, whether you're a CFO within a business, to really unlock the financial statements. And I think this is such an important thing of tools like this, that we understand that it actually takes our knowledge further, that it doesn't take us backwards by not doing the Excel spreadsheet. If we're able to gain more for the information in a quicker amount of time, it allows us to ask deeper questions, to get more involved with the client, and really help our clients or internally in a business as well. And I think it's really important that we don't forget what it is that we are trying to accomplish. It's not necessarily the data crunching and the numbers in Excel. We might enjoy doing that. But at the end of the day, if we are able to utilize a tool that can leave all those hours and hours behind so that we can spend our time on the right things, it is incredible what is out there today to be able to unlock this information for businesses, for our clients. It's just amazing. So these types of things that Martin's done has really revolutionized the profession and the way we deliver work. And I think a really important thing that we talked about in running a company like this, going from a startup and growing the company through different investment, areas that we want to achieve, and also growing with people, we have to go from a subject matter expert to actually what drives those other people through the hard times that we talk about in small business so that they don't get distracted, they don't feel deflated as well. And so when we talked about how important it was to have these values in our business, we talked about that he really develops a culture that, in quotes, he says, let your geek flag fly, that whatever's your unique gift, that you're making sure that in the work that you do, that you are able to do that. And I think that was a really good question that he was asking people as he met with them to make sure that their work didn't feel like work and that they're not feeling stagnant. So making sure that even if someone is excited this year, that next year they're still excited about that work. One of the questions that he asked was, what would you tell yourself a year ago? And what would your future self tell you now? And I think both of those questions are really important so that we make sure that we are always in our zone, that we're in our flow, and we're able to achieve the work and life of our dreams. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Martin. I know I enjoyed the discussion. So many takeaways on just really driving yourself, having a dream, and just not giving up on it and continuing on that path and what's next, making sure that you're always in that zone and excited about the things that you are doing. This episode was sponsored by Jirav. Drive efficient growth in your accounting and finance practice with Jirav's all-in-one forecasting, budgeting, reporting, and dashboarding solution. Jirav automates financial planning and analysis and empowers firms to triple their advisory revenue by integrating general ledger, workforce, and non-financial data. As the preferred solution provider of CPA.com, Jirav is trusted by over 4,000 businesses and firms thanks to our exceptional platform, training, and support. To learn more about Jirav and their accounting firm partner program, visit jirav.com. That is JIRAV.com. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.